Welcome back to a bonus episode of Off the Wire. We thought this week, with everything that went on with this bad patch pushed out by CrowdStrike on Friday morning, a little after midnight, that we'd come to you with a bonus episode. Anthony, he went through having to get his environment back up and going. Obviously, it caused worldwide outages. So, Anthony, have you gotten caught up on your sleep since Friday morning?
Yeah, I did take a nice nap about 5 p.m. on Friday. I figured just to kind of kick things off, I would go over our story that we had at our organization, and then kind of move on to the incident as a whole. So just to kind of relive this, the the incident it happened at 12:09 Eastern. It hit us. We started getting alerts. Now I'm going to go ahead and say this: I didn't wake up for these alerts. The person on call did. We started getting alerts about 12:40 a.m. and at 1:30 I got a call from one of my system administrators, and not he was not his normal self. He was very quiet, very down, decimated, and within 15 minutes I was right there with him. So there wasn't any news or anything out when this hit us, or at least we weren't aware of it. I'll just say that. So he called and was saying we've got a bunch of servers down and they're all blue screening, every single one of them. I remoted into my PC and it blue screened as well. So he didn't want to say it, but I could tell it was on the back of his mind that he kind of felt we'd been hacked. And I was asking questions, just trying. Honestly, I was repeating what he had told me because it was just unbelievable. I'm like, "Is this one server?" And he's like, "No, we've got, you know, a lot of servers. Most of our servers, or sorry, I apologize. He didn't say most. He said quite a bit of our servers." And he started naming them, and they were most of them were key servers. It was stuff that our organization couldn't run. And I'm like, your workstation had the same thing. And I was like, are they still down? And he's like, well, they come up and then they go right back down. We've got some that won't come up. We've got some that they'll run for a few minutes and then they'll blue screen again. And he kept saying CrowdStrike with it. And honestly, I'm telling you, it probably took about 10 minutes for it to click, really what was going on. Eventually he was like, I don't know that this is the case, but I'm a little concerned that we've been hacked. The symptoms with the blue screen, and we got some high utilization alerts before stuff started crashing. And we actually found an article. And now the article's from 2023, but the incident happened several years ago, and it talked about adversaries using CrowdStrike to get in people's environment, which I was completely unaware of. And this happened a long time ago. It wasn't The article was from 2023, but the incident, it was early on. So in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but think that's what was going on with us. Not gonna lie, my stomach just dropped. Like, it was, I don't know, it was just everything. Every single minute was like an hour. It was just, I don't know. It was really, it was really hard to deal with mentally. And so we just took things going slow, and I was like, let's get organized. We started making a list. Let's get a list of servers that are impacted. Let's see if there's some common denominator. And we started doing the servers, and honestly, I'm not gonna lie, we did not put two and two together, for a little while, that it was all Windows boxes. But we were just trying to get, but it was every different type of system, whether it was in the DMZ or on another network, they were crossing different zones. Anyways, we really didn't have an answer, and we we called support and for CrowdStrike, and got an automated recording. And honestly, I still couldn't tell you what it says to this day, but I heard Windows and CrowdStrike, and I don't know if blue screen. I could be imagining it, but basically, I got an automated response. Basically, they were aware that there was something going on, and I'm not gonna lie, like, that was a huge relief, because I knew it was an actual issue. It wasn't, we had been breached. Anyways, I'm not gonna lie, like, it was a whole lot easier to move forward after that. I mean, there was still a little bit of doubt. We didn't get total. I didn't feel totally confirmed on that it wasn't an incident until we went to their support portal and saw that basically they talked about the blue screen and basically the same symptoms we were having. So from 1:30, now my folks were dealing with this. Two of my folks were dealing with this before they called me, but so I got alert at 1:30. We didn't see that information on the portal till 2:30, and I apologize. I apologize. I'm wrong on that. We saw the it was probably about a half hour later we saw the stuff on the portal. I'm going to tell you that half hour is probably the longest half hour of my life. I'm not exaggerating. It felt like an eternity. And then from there, we're like, what are we going to do? And we're trying to break it down. We had a list of servers. We knew we weren't focused on the workstations. We were just all about the servers. We want to not impact the our customers, our members. So we had a pretty good list of all the servers, and there was no fix from CrowdStrike at this point. And we had this incident open on the portal, and I was refreshing it like every 10 minutes, and um, anyways, so we started going down the only rabbit hole that we knew. We're like, let's remove CrowdStrike from a box and see if it resolves the issue. And so we did that on a like a secondary box of a system, and it didn't blue screen after we did that. And it took a little while to do that. It was in the virtual environment, so it was relatively easy to do. I mean, we had to jump through some hoops to do it, but we got it done. I'm not gonna lie, like there was three of us on the call, and I was like, well, let's go do it on another box and just one more time and make sure. And then I was like, in my mind, I was like, this is what we're doing, like it or not, we're gonna remove CrowdStrike from our entire network. We started to go on, and what I didn't know is one of my coworkers, he was refreshing that portal like every 5 seconds, I think. So he's like, hold on. He's like, before we do that. And I was like, what is it? He's like, they've got a fix. Okay. And so we open up the fix. We're all looking at it, and, basically boot into safe mode and delete, go to, I know this, it's C colon Windows System 32 drivers, CrowdStrike, and then delete file CTAC 50 291 star, everything after that. So anyways, we went on a box. We're like, let's confirm this. So on that box we were getting ready to remove CrowdStrike from, we went into it, and we did safe mode with command prompt, and we did directory command and with the CTAC 50291 to see how many files were there. There were two, and they coincided with our alerts. So we started getting alerts about I think it was like 12:49 or something like that, and the file had been written at like 12:46. So and there's lots of files in this. It isn't, there was probably 100 files or more in this, and all the 291s were fairly recent. We deleted those files, and then we restarted the server, and it came back up, and it worked fine. Before we broke apart, all three of us, we did it to one more box, and then it was successful. Like I'll say this, like even though this is a horrible thing to be dealing with, we were so happy that we had the fix. And also we weren't removing our EDR from all of our devices. So even in these bleak times, I'll say this, like we were kind of joking around a little bit. I'm not gonna say it was fun. This is like 2:30 in the morning, 2:40 in the morning, after being up for a little while. So we the two guys with me, they kind of disbanded and started working independently, and then I was doing the communications part. And I'll say this was in the back of my mind the whole time. Like when I thought it was an incident, like I was like, do I call the CEO? And I didn't want to do that until I had some facts, but it was in the back of my mind. I knew that there wasn't many people being impacted, and I really just didn't know enough, and I didn't want have that call. And, if it would have went on for longer, if it was during, hours where it was impacting folks, I would have done that earlier. But I wanted to have some facts. Once I knew we had an issue, or once I knew we had that solution, we did a game plan. I was like, let's take care of all the servers in the virtual environment. And while you guys are working on the servers, I'm going to start creating a list of the workstations. So, they were plugging away at the servers, and we're all, just on a chat group talking, and they're going through the list. And as they fix things, I'm updating the list. And then while they were doing that, I was on our environment where we manage all of our workstations. Well, we manage our workstations and our servers, and I was basically going through anything that wasn't reporting. I was marking as down and adding it to the list. After we finished that list was for the workstations, for the computers. It was about 90% of all of our workstations were down. And I'll say this: we tell people to leave their workstation on at night so it can get updates and everything. So, I didn't think there were very many that were shut off. And I know on some of our display workstations that we got like all these monitors all over through the offices. We've got it so if they do get shut down, they power back up as long as I got power within so many seconds. So, I was pretty confident in that number. The only thing I wasn't super confident about was we were actually in the middle of a deployment of the workstations that were being replaced for that year. So we've done about half of them. So I knew we had, some of those on that list were not yet deployed. The servers, I mean, it was quite a bit of servers. I'm guessing, I don't have a firm count, but I would say it was probably about 30% of our servers.
I've just been sitting here thinking about something. I know you guys, obviously, you're coming at this remote. Most people would on an after hours thing. So your servers, those are maybe the easiest. Obviously, you have
Yeah.
remote capabilities where you can go and actually KVM and actually see, get things into safe mode, remove files. But all your desktops are on site, and there's no way to boot a desktop into safe mode, at least not that I'm aware, remotely without having to be there. So, how did you guys game plan that? I mean,
Yeah. And that's so while they were working, I know it's like some of me wanted to start working on the servers. And honestly, I'm going to go back to when I was in the Marines. Um, when I was in, this sounds stupid, but this is just a simple way of looking at it. When we were loading a Humvee full of material, one guy would always stand in the back and basically orchestrate it. If all of us were up in there, you're going to be just like stuck in the weeds, and you're not going to see the big picture. So you know, anyways, just knowing that from the years, I knew it was important for me to you know be looking at the big picture of things. And so I was first before I get to the workstations, I was focused on communications. I sent an email to all employees, let them know what had happened. Basically, told them that this was a worldwide event, and in that, it was our plan. So we had the game plan. So we've got 3 district offices. We got our headquarters and 2 district offices, and the game plan is for 2 folks. And I'll say this: we could have called more people in, but the thing is a lot of people didn't have, they don't have, they didn't have rights or in some of the systems. So we kind of that, and I wanted some fresh bodies. I knew that this was not going to be done by 8. I was hoping that we got the bulk of it done by 8 before the office opens. So I chose not to. We were in communications with one person, so she was checking on some servers after us. But anyways, I wrote the email with the game plan. The game plan is we're going to go to Burgal. We're going to go to the headquarters. We're going to start working on the workstations, and we'll move over to the districts afterwards. So those guys, they headed out before me. I was still trying to finish. I wanted for when them to get on site. I wanted to have a full list of everything they need to look at, and wanted to have all the communications and everything done. So they were on site. They had their list. They were going through it. I got changed and drove out, and I'm further away from the office than they are. So they had probably been there, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour before I got there. And the first room that they were supposed to work on was our dispatch area. And when I got there, they were just in that room. I was like, oh, I didn't say anything to them. I was like, oh my God. I was like, So they had, somewhere they had to, they couldn't boot into it, so they built a bunch of They had a good plan. They had a bunch of USB drives that they put, I believe it's Hiram's boot disk or something like that on it. Basically, just a way that they could boot in and get into some of these systems. I'm not sure really what all happened with that, because after we went through it, I know that they had a couple that they had to use that on, but for the most part, what we were seeing is, everything we have has BitLocker on it, and we use Laps for the local admin password. So I mean, having that data was key. Having the BitLocker code and that local admin password. But anyways, they started with dispatch, and then they started, then they went to member services, the customer facing people. Once they got that done, they did a few more than that. I was like, you guys, I was like, it was about 6:30 a.m. I was like, you guys need to start heading to the districts. And because I was looking at my watch, because one of them it takes about an hour to get to. They split. One went to Rose Hill, one went to Elizabethtown. One's like a half hour away. The other one's it's really about 50 minutes away. While they were doing that, I started hitting up workstations and just knocking them out left and right. I would, if I would work on one, if it worked, great, it was up. And then, but if it didn't, honestly, I skipped it. I was like, I go back. I was like, I'm just going to try to get as many people as up as possible, and I'll come back to the ones that are giving us issues. By 8 a.m., we had, I'll say this, we probably had the bulk of the workstations up, but we probably had, I don't know, I'm guessing, but I'm guessing we maybe had like 20 workstations at 8 a.m. that weren't working. And most of them were the ones that we had issues with, and it was either the device didn't match what was in what we had for BitLocker. We had a few instances of that. End up we found every single one. We just had some where it, believe it or not, it was just getting it in safe mode with networking. We had some that were just a pain in the butt. I couldn't tell you what it was. Some of them, while we're working it, an easy one when we were working it, we would, I could have one, and my guys are much faster than me, but I could have it knocked out, and I never really timed one, but I want to say like 8 minutes. But the trouble ones, those ones, might take a half hour. Like the one issue we ran into is some of them would go straight to a command prompt, but the ones that wouldn't, they would boot Windows and then they would have a command prompt open. And I'm sure someone knows what the difference is, but I don't at this point. But just in one, we had issues getting to that. But then after I would log in with the local admin password, it took about 10, I would say about 10 minutes just for it to log in. So,
Wow.
anyways, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So, what time do you guys feel like you got back to what you would say normal, 100% up and operating?
I would say it was probably about 11 o'clock when we had
Wow.
the actual last workstation done.
That's still really impressive.
And I mean, I was happy with it. Like, our customers, they weren't impacted. It was just a few employees, but all the key employees to operate the business, short term that needed to be up, were up. I was actually on vacation Thursday, and I was supposed to be on vacation Friday. But anyway, so yeah, I think I sent one. I sat down, talked with the CEO. He knew what he had all the communications. I sent out several emails during the day, and he knew I was not in the best of moods, And anyways, he kept out of my hair, but I mean, we had the bulk of stuff going. But anyways, I did a debrief with him and just discussed the timelines and what happened and all that. And of course, everyone had saw the news at this point. That was apparent to everyone. And then I think I took off about, it was about 11:30, and I took off and headed back home.
Wow, what an event. So, you talked about a little bit about like what made you, or obviously at first you thought it was a cyber event, but then there was like this point where you realized that was it just the notification on their website? Was it actually when you confirmed it? Like, was there
the
a direct point in time where you were like, this is definitely not a cyber event and I know it? And like, was there that particular thing that you can remember?
in the back of my mind at the early stage, it was a cyber event. But I'll say this: there was no other, there was no other symptom. There was no other telltale. So I felt like it was unlikely that it was a cyber event when we called and got that automated message. But I didn't feel certain about it until I saw the portal and it talked about a blue screen. I don't believe the voicemail. I think it just said that Windows and CrowdStrike's having issues. On
Hmm.
the portal, it talked about the blue screen, and when I saw that, that's when I was like, "We're we're good, but let's still be a little cautious." So, I mean, we're still a little cautious, but once we had confirmed the second device was the fix, then we just started focus. We're treating it as a not a technical issue, not a security event. After that, it wasn't until that second I had to see two get resolved by their fix.
So, I've obviously read about, what happened, but, this could have been, like a malicious update. Whenever you were talking, I was kind of thinking back to different things that I've experienced in the past, and the SolarWinds thing came to mind, where someone actually put
Hmm.
in kind of a malicious update and a patch, and then when everyone patched, they were compromised. Did that go through your mind at all? Were you thinking, even though obviously they were telling you, hey, this is how you fix it, was there any thought in your mind that, maybe this is something that they didn't mean to do? Or did you see, you know, a tweet or a press release or something that like they confirmed that they were the one that pushed out the update?
So honestly, I don't know if it's confidence, ignorance, or whatever, but I never in the back of my mind did I think that it was something that was maliciously done through their system. I'll say this though, it wasn't really until about 2 hours before us meeting right now. I was looking on Reddit, and there is a little bit of banter on, maybe maybe it was a security incident. I still don't think it's likely. There's a lot of rumors and stuff going out there. Some of it might be true. We'll see how this shakes out. Down the road. I guarantee that it's not? Absolutely not. Honestly, I've always been, the I love CrowdStrike, I love CrowdStrike. And after that, clearly they've got some stuff to work out. I do think they have a good tool, but this is an unacceptable event that has happened. We'll see what happens, but we really want to know that this is not going to happen again.
Yeah, so let's recap a little bit about the worldwide impact. Obviously, you know, you guys are not the only people that run CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike's a very popular tool for protecting systems, servers, workstations, etc. And so they push out this bad patch. It's putting, machines into a blue screen of death loop. There's a lot of other people scrambling. There's a ton of organizations that were affected. I don't even know. I'm not even sure that can be counted. Obviously, I'm sure someone's going to come up with a count. Maybe CrowdStrike could come up with a count. Critical.
Microsoft actually,
Did Microsoft actually come up with a count?
yeah, they're estimating that was 8.5 million devices. And just one thing I'll mention during this event, it was, I don't know if it was somewhere probably between 2 and 3 a.m. But one of the folks that was on the phone posted that basically airlines are down. I guarantee they're using CrowdStrike.
Yeah, I mean, getting ready to go there. Critical infrastructure. There was airlines. There was cloud infrastructure providers, which is kind of a inception kind of thing where the person providing you the servers is the one that's down, and many other things, obviously. So one thing I don't know, and I know cybersecurity is a little bit of a different animal, but the first thing that popped into my mind as I was reading about this on Friday is why did they push all the updates at once? Why would they not phase in their updates? Almost every other, and maybe it's a cybersecurity thing, but almost every other provider, like I think of Microsoft's products, if you get like an Outlook update or something like that, it happens like over time. You might have a pocket of your machines get it, another pocket get it, another pocket get it. Um, and this may be
I've
something they
got
change
some
after this, but
information.
okay, good. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, this is just me doing some reading, so don't quote me on this. But my understanding is, so this was when I looked at the files that were in that folder, they were getting pushed constantly. But so it's my understanding this is a channel file. So it was CTAC 50. The C, I believe, stands for channel, and that's what I've read. But so, there's a lot of systems, and I believe Microsoft, like Teams and all of them, operate this way. So there's the code, like the actual code for the application, and then there's the channel updates. So that's the way I understand this was a channel update. So this was just, a data file that got updated, and the code interacts with the data file. So
Hmm.
this is all rumors. This isn't confirmed, but the data file 291, there's some rumors going around that it was filled with a bunch of zeros. So, people are talking about, like, if they were just doing a null check, they could have caught this. But what they're saying, what actually happened is that it made the code. So, the code's looking at the data file and responding to it, and it was saying that it basically pointed to invalid portion of memory, and that's what was causing it the blue screen. So
Gotcha.
the memory part, I I do think that's pretty accurate. I don't know about the zeros, like, maybe that's the case, maybe it's not. I'm not sure. I feel a little more confident on it. It pointed to an invalid memory space, which we all know that could cause it the blue screen.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the channel file, I guess, is like a real time kind of file that you said they were constantly updating, so that would make more sense. You would think like this file would be pushed to multiple different test systems prior, and there would be like some things like you said, maybe a
Yeah.
null check, or I was thinking like a hash, MD5 hash. You ought to be able to run that file through like
Hmm.
a particular thing, verify the hash before you push the update. But I mean, I think this is something that CrowdStrike's probably, I mean, obviously, not even probably, they are going to look at how they push out updates in the future. With some
Yeah.
of these cybersecurity software, like you said, it's looking at memory, it's looking at every part of the disk. All of them do this. It's not limited only to CrowdStrike. And so cybersecurity software puts us kind of in in a little bit of a pickle when it comes to these kind of things because it has so much control over systems. It can obviously remove things. It can shut down processes. It can, you know, look into memory, all those other kind of things. And so, kind of going forward, is this something like the industry needs to look at? I mean, I know it's kind of a catch-22 because you wanted to be able to protect all those things, but if someone in the wrong hands or even in the accidental bad patch hands, these things can be pretty devastating.
Yeah, I think this really just showed us how vulnerable we are, like, and it's not just the country, it's the world. We've got all these systems that rely on this IT infrastructure, and
Yeah, it's something. Yeah, it's something tough to think about because, especially with critical infrastructure, which you're in the critical infrastructure space, right? And many of these other things, you talk about airlines. I think there was one airline that was operating out of the four or five major ones. I'm not sure about the smaller airlines, but like you said, our infrastructure is very. I wouldn't say. I mean, I think vulnerable, true, but I think fragile. I think people are so used to. We work
yeah,
in the electricity space. We talk about this all the time, right? People just go over there, they flip on the light switch, you know, and things come on. And even a cyber attack doesn't have this kind of reach. But people are just used to being able to go to Delta and buy a ticket. And if you can't go to Delta and buy a ticket, I mean, you can't go to Walmart. I don't know if Walmart was affected, but can't go to Walmart and do a pickup order. I mean, I could see people kind of spiraling. Technology, kind of like we talk about electricity, but technology kind of has its hands in so many things that it's now kind of a critical piece of the world infrastructure, along with
yeah.
electricity and other critical power plants and all the other critical things. I never really thought about that as we could be taken down by like electricity can be taken down by technology, airlines can be taken down by technology, and now with the consolidation and there's not 40 vendors of this type of cyber software. So even if there's, I don't know, 10, 15, you're talking about 15%, 1/15th of the world's computers, and we all know that some of them have bigger market share than others. It's kind of a scary thought.
Yeah, and as bad as this was, and I was just thinking, what if something happened to Microsoft, and it was literally every Microsoft device, This was just the folks that had a particular piece of software. And I'm not saying that'll happen, but it just like this could be much worse than what it was. And trust me, this is bad. This is real bad. Just none of these are confirmed, but this is all the. I did a quick look to see what organizations were impacted. And this is just a few of them that I could find. I had CISA, Department of Homeland Security, Amazon. Matter of fact, I went to check my orders and it didn't say CrowdStrike, but it said due to a third party incident that deliveries will be delayed. Their site didn't go down or anything like that, but they were impacted. I saw that on a news article. Visa, ADT, that does payroll for a lot of folks. Charles Schwab, TD Bank, Bank of America. There are numerous airlines, television networks. I saw several people on the news, and they had the blue screen of death behind them. Times Square. I don't know if you've caught it. There's a picture circulating the Times Square, all the displays at Times Square with the blue screen of death on most of the screens. So this was this was huge.
Yeah, and I don't know. You've definitely, obviously, with your experience, looked into this, in much greater detail than I have. But I think there was some initial kind of conversation around the fact that the CEO kind of went, he kind of was nobody could get him. Like, he was kind of away from his phone, do not disturb. Maybe you could comment on that because I think that was obviously a really big thing early on.
Honestly, I did not hear that, but I saw him on the news that morning, and he was visibly shaken. Like he started talking. I mean, he did all right, but there was some where he just started choking, and it may have been dry mouth, but like literally was just all choking up. When discussing this on the news. And anyways, he took a drink of water and still choking up. Eventually, he composed himself. But anyways, I would not want to be in his shoes right now.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, obviously, there's the business impact to CrowdStrike. I mean, I'm sure they're going to lose some customers over this. Actually, I mean, it's almost impossible not to. They are going to lose some customers. And one thing I was looking at, I had seen a Reddit post or something, and I was looking at their stock, and their stock is down. I think it was down. Let's see, about it's 17% in the 5 days, but I think it dropped. Let's see that. Now, obviously, it's risen a little bit since then, but it dropped about a little over 10% as soon as this happened, which is wild. I just think of all the obviously it's not real money until you sell the stock, but I think of the on paper wealth that was eliminated in that, like, you know 20-minute window,
I am
which is
a
just wild.
investor
Say
in that
what?
stock.
Oh,
I I'm an investor in that stock. I looked at my Robinhood account, and anyway, it's not like a huge portion, but it was definitely a noticeable impact.
yeah. I mean,
And
I just
honestly, I thought it would be much worse than what it was.
yeah, I thought so too. To be honest, I heard there was stories about the stock going down, and um, I thought when I looked at it, I was like, oh, I'm expecting like 20 to 30%. So good. I mean,
Hmm.
I think people, they'll give you some leeway. I think the big thing out of this event is not necessarily the event itself. Obviously, the event is going to be scrutinized. There's going to be some changes, but it's like how they handle it and how they communicate going forward. If they say, here's what happened, here's how we're going to fix it, here's a new plan we have in place for how this is not going to happen again, I think that's going to go a long way. Obviously, if they don't do that, or if they're really
Yeah.
quiet, or they don't, if they're not very transparent, then this could potentially hurt them really, really, really long term. So you just said, and I've heard you even say on some of our podcasts, how much of a CrowdStrike fanboy you are. What's going through your head now?
Eating those words.
Like, I mean, obviously nobody's just going to
Well,
rip out software, but like, how has your thoughts changed throughout this event?
I won't be bragging as much as I have in the past. I still think it's a very good product. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I really want an answer. Like, if they're not transparent, that will say something to me. If they, which it appears they've owned up to it, but they need to. I'd like to know what happened. Was this a lone developer? Was this some automated system where all the developers put in their code and it pushes this channel file out. What caused this? What can they do for checks and balances to ensure this doesn't happen again? Transparency, it needs to happen. And I mean, are we looking to leave? No, I do think it's one of the best products out there. This is the big exception. What happened? Like that's huge. Like that's and maybe if I was a huge organization and we had 20,000 workstations and we're down for a week, I may have a different I may not have the same thought. If it impacted the business for a week solid and we were down, well, one, I might not have a job, so I may not be making that decision. So it's hard to tell. One thing I think that's interesting or what we'll see in the future, there's a lot of discussion is, a lot of people are like, CrowdStrike should be liable for this. And, there's some people saying, they won't be, but they should be. And I'll just say this, CrowdStrike, what the news that we were getting at first was in Australia because of the time zone. And this is an organization that is around the world. So I'll say this, they may not be liable here, but I would imagine in some countries they are going to be liable. If you go across the world and all the different rules and regulation, like I would imagine to some degree they'll probably have to be liable in some instance.
Yeah, that's going to be tough, I think. I mean, obviously, I think everyone wants them to be liable, but I mean, just airlines alone, if you think if airlines can't fly for 6, 8 hours, all the lost business, I mean, it would pretty much bankrupt the company, for them to be liable. So I'm sure,
Yeah.
my guess, obviously, I haven't read through their terms of service. My guess is their terms of service cover it, and it pretty much,
Hmm.
makes them immune to this kind of thing. I think any legal team worth their salt would have written it that way, especially with the software that we've already discussed is so critical. So I think we want them to be, but if them being liable results in them not being a company anymore, then I think
Yeah.
that might be tough.
Or
Now
passing,
yeah, you were talking about
well, or they pass on those rates to us.
yeah, that's true. Or they pay for it, and then it's like all of a sudden they went VMware on us, and raise up your rates 2 or 3 times. But one thing I saw on Reddit, obviously not confirmed. Reddit is not a. I mean, it's a great source of news, I think, but you gotta triple confirm things. But one guy posted on there that they
Hmm.
had 350,000 machines affected by this. Now that was
Oh my
global,
gosh.
but honestly, I don't even know. Where would you start? Where would you start if you had, I mean, not even 350,000. Let's just say you had 50,000. And obviously, if you have 50,000
Yeah.
machines, your branches are going to be, you're going to have tons of branches, districts, whatever. And on probably most likely, most of your people are going to be remote. Like, where,
Hmm.
and I think you talked about it a little bit. And I think that really, you handled it in a really good way. Whether it was cyber attack or what it ended up being, is you started breaking down the problem. But how do you break down 50,000 workstations? Gosh, that would be, I don't even
There
know.
was
I'll probably just
actually
walk out and
a
be like,
post.
well, I'm done.
There was a post on LinkedIn, and this does not answer that, but there was an interesting post on LinkedIn talking about if you had work from home employees and they're like, and many people are like, in our case, they've got BitLocker on these devices, and they've got the local admins. Um, the person posted, if you've got someone that's 3 hours away, are you gonna give them the BitLocker key and the local admin? And anyway, I responded to that and just said, all of our people are local, so we told those that are working remote that had issues to come in and bring their laptop. Honestly, what we found is those people had their laptop at home and they had it off, so they didn't get the update. There was only a couple of them that did, that had it on. So for the most part, those people actually weren't impacted. I hope that doesn't mean that they're going to leave their device off at night because we do need those things to get updated. But anyways, what I said, with like, so we use laps. Our local admin passwords get changed daily. I wouldn't have an issue trying to work with if someone was 3 hours, 5 hours, or away. Like, and this is something that I'm not saying it's the right thing, but I was just thinking in my scenario, at least with our organization, if we had that case, like we can share the local admin password and share the BitLocker key and just change it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
If it took getting people up, the whole CIA triad availability is, the third leg. I don't know that's the right answer, but it got me thinking, would I guess I would in that instance, try to work with users remotely and share that information as long as it could be changed. I'm not saying that's the right answer.
Yeah, I would agree with that, to be honest. Obviously, I know everything. You want to maintain your cyber kind of resilience, no matter the situation. But I think availability, and I think it comes down. We talked a little bit about it with Zero Trust episode. So if you're listening to this and you haven't called the Zero Trust, definitely go back and listen to it. But we talked that no matter what cybersecurity things we put in place, no matter whether that's BitLocker, CrowdStrike, or the Laps, local admin reset, the business still has to operate. And I think that's something. This is a good reminder of that all the cybersecurity protections in the world, all the different pieces of technology that we have, if someone can't use the computer, that is like they could care less. And honestly, I think we have to figure out some ways where we can, you know, be more flexible in that scenario. Like you were saying, I would have done the same thing. I think availability, I know they're all important, but availability when it's just a machine down or not, I think has to take precedence over some of the other things.
Well, one thing, the story I discussed, I was willing to take down our EDR completely just to get uptime. So, anyways, yeah, there's some of these decisions are just not easy decisions. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, I think there's going to be a lot more that comes out. So hopefully, like we talked about, they're going to be a lot more transparent. But I think it was worth having the conversation while it was fresh in your mind, and you just went through this, and it was kind of interesting. I think for us not to be going through this, so that dichotomy. I slept like a baby on Friday morning, but but I've been there. I've been there with other things. I've been there with we've had a cyber incident that we had to work through. Luckily, it wasn't active on our environment. It was a vendor, but I've had that pit of the stomach feeling, and it doesn't even matter if it's a cyber event. I've had that unavailability pit of the stomach feeling, which in my opinion is just as bad. So
Hmm.
I think you guys worked well through it, and obviously I think all the team probably deserves an extra day off. Maybe you can work that in.
Yeah, the a couple. I guess just want to throw one thing, and it was you actually discussed it in one of the previous episodes. Basically, you guys kind of have like we were talking about the incident response. You were mentioning having kind of like a bug out bag for IT.
Mhm.
That's something we will 100% be creating here soon. We're going to have, you mentioned a workstation off the domain. This was a good example of that. The having thumb drives with tools on it, already prepped, that would have helped us, got us a little further. So we're 100% going to be doing that. Not just, this isn't a lesson learned, but one thing I just want to make people aware of, there's been a few news articles about this, but sorry, there's malicious actors out there taking advantage of the situation. So, if you're one of those environments and you got 350,000 workstations, you're gonna have to have some kind of automated tool. Now, I don't know how that works with BitLocker. I'll say that if that's even possible, but there's malicious actors out there saying that they have tools out there available, and if you use them, they're embedded with malicious software. And then also, there's people saying that they offer support on this CrowdStrike incident, and there are malicious actors out there now. So I'm sure there's some organizations out there still dealing with this, but just be aware that not everyone's your friend that's offering to help.
Yeah, there was a couple things I thought about too on things that we have done. Obviously, we haven't gone through this, but for specific incidents such as this, you talked about one, the bug out bag. I've actually, thinking just hearing your story and what you guys went through, I'm thinking maybe we need to expand that and maybe I don't know that we want to do one for every IT employee, but I'm thinking maybe like half of the IT employees, 4 or 5 maybe. I
Mm.
think it's worth having. I mean, machines are pretty reasonable, and an incident like that would be pretty much worth its weight in gold. The other thing, and I don't know if you do
Mm-hmm.
this or not, but Having one thing we've done over the past few years is starting to have predetermined basically templates for outages for applications and things like that. One,
Yeah.
we wanted people to like trust us whenever we said an outage was up or down, or there was some sort of something wrong with a application. So we wanted it to be the same no matter what. So we have a nice little template, but it's really, really handy in situations where there is an incident because you can actually double click up, open a template. It already is filled out depending on the application. In this case, obviously, it's everything, but depending on the application, we already have filled in who it needs to go to, who's like the key stakeholders. It's already has a grid.
Hmm.
You just fill out the grid, who's working on it, what's the issue, what's the ETA on, having things back up, and you can just hit send. And it is really nice when you have an incident like this to be able to send that out really quickly.
Yeah, I can see that probably would have helped me. I think I did well with my communications, but I'm sure I missed on some things. If I go back and review it, I don't think I gave an ETA, and that probably would have been something a lot of people were expecting.
Yeah, it's something we've started doing. We do this with all of our applications because not every application requires all employees to be notified. In this case, it would have been for sure, but you may have an application that just has 5 or 6 key stakeholders. You just need to alert them. But
Hmm.
trying to remember on the fly when an application's down, oh, what are the 5 people I need to like, who do I need to remember to communicate with this about? That's always difficult for us. So that's
Yeah.
something we started doing. And I think for those that went through this or those that didn't go through this and are just thinking about ways that can improve, that was something I thought about as well as you were speaking. So thanks for joining us for another episode of Off the Wire, our second bonus episode. So really excited to bring this to you. We wanted to bring you this while it was still fresh in everybody's mind. Obviously, with Anthony going through this, it was nice to be able to hear his story and just kind of learn some lessons potentially, but also just to kind of empathize with him. We've all been there. We've all had those kind of incidents, whether it's a cyber event or something else, and we know, and so we sympathize. And we've been up there. We've been up during nights, during the middle of the night, trying to figure out why something's going wrong. So it was nice to hear that, and we wanted to get it out while it was still, current news. We name dropped a couple of our other episodes, so if you haven't heard those, we did a really good one on Zero Trust last week. So go back and listen to that if you're still with us at this point. And we are going to be doing these episodes as usual every other Monday, unless we have a bonus episode like this. Please follow us on our social media channels. If you have a chance, share this with someone that you think could use it. Again, this is Off the Wire with Tanner and Anthony.